It's kind of fitting right now that we're going to be talking to our next guest. Glenn Thibeault is the NDP MP for Sudbury. He has reintroduced a bill and is a co-sponsor of a bill in the House of Commons relating to the serious, I don't want to say outbreak, but the serious numbers of youth head injuries that we're seeing in Canada. We're very pleased at this time to be joined by Glenn Thibeault. Glenn, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
No problem. Thanks for having me back.
We've talked about this issue in the past, obviously, and it would seem to me that more than ever, given what we know now after this recent CBC report on Rick Martin and what the Boston University research committee has found about brain injuries in athletes who, frankly, aren't goons, injuries that occur just as a result of the normal course of play. This bill would seem to be even more important than ever from my point of view.
Yeah, and, I can't agree more. It's, I'm not trying to get government involved in, putting on a referee jersey and skating around the ice or being on the soccer pitch where whatever it is. But you know what? The federal government has an opportunity here to take a leadership role and take that first practical step, I think, in addressing the concussion epidemic. And you know what? We don't use that word loosely, but I think it's becoming more and more of an epidemic, unfortunately, in amateur and youth athletics. And you know what? Here's an opportunity for us to take that leadership role.
What do you envision you mentioned a national sports injury surveillance and data collection system. What do you envision as the practical outcome of that?
Well, one of the things that, I've met with Football Canada, I've met with many of the other sporting organizations, and what all of them are, they're all columns, they're all silos. They have this great, way to document and track and share information, but they don't share it with anyone else. And so what I'm hoping to accomplish is, get all of the experts together, get the sporting organizations together, get the medical communities together, the first ministers of health and sport from the provinces, all sit down at the table, and they come up with the strategies to put in place what we need to do to start reducing the number of concussions that we see. There's an inherent risk in every sport. We understand that. I'm not trying to take hitting out of the game, right? It's a part of the game. But what we can do is create a system at the grassroots level that when a child falls on the ice and slides into the board and smacks his head, that everyone in the arena, from the coaches to the trainers to the officials to the fans to the parents, all say, you know what? That player needs to get off the ice and get checked out. Because we all now know the effects at the end of this, that if we don't address the concussions when they possibly happen, the long-term effects are going to be dramatic.
With NDP MP Glenn Thibeault, it appears as if some of the minor sports organizations have started to take steps towards monitoring concussions or dealing with concussions. But, Glenn, my concern has always been, and I don't mean this as a slam at hockey parents or at hockey coaches or referees, but frankly, you're asking people to make a decision about a person's long-term health who, frankly, it doesn't matter, I don't think anyhow, how many booklets you give them. They're not equipped to make a decision about a brain injury. And I don't know how do you get around that?
Well, that's part of the other plan is we need to ensure that, we talk about education. And I've always related it to checking from behind, right? If we go back a decade, maybe a little bit more than that, remember when checking behind was such an issue? And everyone said we need to stop this in our sport. And at the grassroots level, they're doing a darn good job of it. Does it still happen? Of course, unfortunately. But you know what? The officials, the parents, and everyone is involved. So we need to ensure that people are educated in the components of it. Because the thing about a concussion is it's not like, unfortunately, breaking something where you can see it, right? So when the child's sitting on the bench, and of course we're using hockey right now, but if the child's sitting on the bench, two hands on the stick, sitting there waiting for the next shift, he's not going to say or she's not going to say, "Coach, I can't go," because they want to help their teammates out. So we've got to get the mentality. We've got to start at the grassroots level to let them know it's okay to say, you know what, something's up here. I'm not feeling 100%, coach. We do, you do the checks. and you get them off. Because the cost of this, not only to our healthcare system, but to our social system, right? Like the long-term effects of this are something we need to start looking at and making sure we're addressing. Because, Smart Risk in 2009, just from injuries alone, from falling on the ice or, falling on the soccer pitch and going to the hospitals at $188 million. So we're not even looking at the after costs, which they're saying is closer to $500 million, even maybe closer to $1 billion.
Glenn, incentivized funding guidelines, just looking at some of the stuff on the information sheet here.
Yep.
What does that mean?
So basically what we're saying is we get everyone together. We get all of the experts together. We come up with the strategy. We come up with the education component, whatever that is, if it's videos, if it's, whatever that training is. Once the organizations say that they want to implement all of these strategies, then we give them the funding necessary to implement that. If you look at what happens with some of the organizations, and I'm picking this one out of the air, like Football Canada, they have 3 people that are running the entire organization, let's say, out of Ottawa. Well, that money, they've got money to organize, but they don't have money to filter this stuff down. So we want to ensure that they want to get this information out and make football safer, especially when it comes to concussions, that they get some funding to make sure that it gets down to the grassroots level and that the training is there and that we're able to provide that training. Because, again, if you're looking at the cost of this, we're spending it in the wrong spot right now. We're being reactive because we have to be, where we can spend a little bit of money proactively here on the preventative side and actually save a lot of money in the long run, but at the same time help the organizations get that information out.
With NDP MP Glenn Thibeault, and we should make this clear, Glenn. This is not just directed at hockey. This is sports in general, be it hockey, football, soccer.
Yes, volleyball.
Right.
You know what? Like this is relating to all sports, and of course, you know what? Hockey's taking center of this. We've purposely introduced this week because the NHL season is starting because hockey season is starting right across the country, and we're seeing more and more of the concussions in hockey. But you know what? It's happening just as much in soccer and in other sports. So you know what? We want to ensure that our youth, who we all know we're hearing more and more of obesity problems, that our kids aren't engaging in physical activity. But then you've got parents coming to me and saying, you know what, I have to pull my 14-year-old daughter out of hockey because she's had 4 concussions already. And the doctor said we can't risk her having another concussion because it'll affect her long-term future. So, if we're looking at the overall cost of this in terms of healthcare costs, the money that we're spending on obesity and everything else is dramatic. We can start changing it by making sure that we put the preventative measures in place so people can feel confident about what we're doing to address an issue like concussions. As I said before, there's an inherent risk in everything, especially in sport. I understand that. No one's trying to change. We can't eliminate that. But what we are trying to change is some of the preventative stuff that we can put in place.
Glenn, thank you very much for joining us this morning.